20 decisions that didn't just fail. They changed American laws, roads, and the industry forever. Some were cover-ups calculated to the penny. Some were promises broken before the ink dried. Stay for number 10. It involves $97 million in British government money, a Belfast factory, and a federal drug arrest in a Los Angeles hotel room. These are the 20 car company disasters that permanently changed American roads. 1. General Motors ignition switch, Chevrolet Cobalt and Saturn Ion, from 2001 to 2014. The Chevrolet Cobalt was the car your neighbor drove. Ordinary in every way. Here is the problem. General Motors engineers knew the ignition switch could cut power while driving, disabling the airbags since 2001. The fix cost less than $1 per car. They rejected it. 124 Americans died. General Motors paid $900 million in criminal penalties 13 years later, less than $1. 13 years, 124 lives. Number 2. The Ford Pinto Memo from 1971 to 1978. The Pinto was Ford's answer to the import invasion, America's first true subcompact, selling by the millions. Here's the terrifying part. Ford engineers documented the defect. Rear-end impacts above 25 miles per hour ruptured the gas tank. The fix cost $11 per car. Ford's internal memo calculated legal liability at $180,000 per human life. They chose the math. 27 people burned. 3. Takata airbag crisis. 67 million American vehicles from 2008 to 2017. The airbag was supposed to be the device that saved your life in the crash you never saw coming. So, what happened? Takata's inflators degraded in heat and humidity and detonated on deployment, sending metal shrapnel directly at the driver's face. Takata had internal reports confirming the defect by 2008 and said nothing. 67 million American vehicles were recalled. 19 Americans were killed. Takata filed the largest industrial bankruptcy in Japanese history. 4. General Motors. CK side saddle fuel tanks, 8 million trucks from 1973 to 1987. The CK pickup was the backbone of working America. Farmers, contractors, and tradesmen trusted that truck with their lives for 3 generations. Here is a nightmare. General Motors mounted the fuel tanks outside the frame rails on 8 million trucks built between 1973 and 1987. Side impacts turned those tanks into firebombs. More than 300 people died in fuel-fed fires. General Motors sued NBC for staging a fake test fire. NBC apologized. By then, 300 people were already gone. Number 5. VW Dieselgate. 11 million vehicles worldwide, 2006 to 2015. The TDI was the thinking person's car, efficient, clean, responsible. So what happened? Volkswagen installed software that detected EPA test cycles and activated emissions controls only during testing. On real American roads, those engines pumped nitrogen oxides at 40 times the legal limit. 11 million vehicles worldwide. Nearly a decade of deliberate fraud. A $33 billion reckoning changed how regulators treat manufacturer self-certification. Some trust cannot be bought back. Number 6. Toyota sudden acceleration. 9 million vehicles from 2000 to 2010. Toyota was the gold standard. The brand made Detroit look embarrassed for a decade. Here is the terrifying part. As unintended acceleration deaths mounted, Toyota actively concealed safety data from federal regulators. Not oversight. A deliberate decision. 9 million vehicles were recalled. There was a criminal penalty of $1.2 billion, the largest ever paid by an automaker at that time. The world's most trusted car brand had been lying to the government that trusted it most. Number 7. Ford Explorer and Firestone, from 1990 to 2000. The Ford Explorer and Firestone tire partnership dated back to Henry Ford and Harvey Firestone in 1906. So what happened? Firestone Wilderness tires began separating at highway speed. The tread peeled away at 70 miles per hour. Several explorers flipped, and 271 Americans died. Ford and Firestone blamed each other publicly while sharing nearly a century of history. Congress passed the Tread Act. 95 years of friendship ended in depositions. General Motors versus Ralph Nader, the Corvair, from 1965 to 1966. The Corvair was General Motors' most ambitious post-war design, rear engine, and genuinely different from everything Detroit built. So, what happened? Ralph Nader documented a rear suspension failure in 1965. General Motors' response was not an engineering fix. They hired private investigators to surveil Nader, tap his phones, and dig up personal dirt. General Motors' own president was forced to apologize in a Senate hearing. Congress created the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration within the year. They tried to destroy the man instead of fixing the car. 9. GM EV1 destruction, over 1,000 vehicles crushed, from 1999 to 2003. The GM EV1 was the future, arriving ahead of schedule with zero emissions, genuinely fast, and loved by every driver who leased one. So what happened? When California weakened its zero-emission vehicle mandate, GM recalled every leased vehicle. Drivers offered to buy their cars outright. GM refused. Over 1,000 EV1 vehicles were crushed at a facility in the Arizona desert, while lessees staged candlelight vigils outside the fence. 2 months later, Tesla incorporated. GM handed Tesla the entire market. 10. The DeLorean collapse. $97 million in British government funding and a factory in Belfast, Northern Ireland, built during the height of the Troubles, from 1981 to 1984. The company burned through capital before turning a profit. On October 19, 1982, John DeLorean was arrested in a Los Angeles hotel room in a federal cocaine trafficking sting. He was later acquitted on entrapment grounds. 2,500 Belfast workers had already lost their jobs. The car became iconic. The promise was already broken. 11. Chrysler Federal Bailout, first too big to fail, 1979. Chrysler in 1979 was losing $100 million every single month. Here is the terrifying part. The federal government had never rescued a major private American corporation, not once. Congress approved $1.5 billion in loan guarantees with conditions. Lee Iacocca cut 60,000 jobs and delivered one of the most famous turnarounds in business history. Chrysler paid back the loans early. But the precedent, corporations too big to fail, saved by taxpayers, was cited directly in 2009 when General Motors came calling. 12. Pontiac eliminated by government decree, April 2009. Pontiac gave America the GTO, the Firebird, the Trans Am, cars that defined what performance meant. So what happened? The federal government's 2009 restructuring of GM included one condition. Pontiac had to go. Not sold, not transferred. Eliminated by decree as the price of a rescue check. $750 million in dealer settlements. The brand was not killed by the market. It was killed by the terms of a bailout. Number 13, Saturn, the $5 billion promise, from 1985 to 2010. Saturn launched with a $5 billion promise, a different kind of car company. No haggle pricing, a separate factory in Spring Hill, Tennessee, and owners so loyal they drove from every state to attend homecoming festivals at the plant. So what happened? General Motors rebadged European Opels as Saturns, and it closed the Spring Hill plant. During the 2009 bankruptcy, the Penske sale collapsed at the last moment. 600 Saturn dealers closed overnight. They didn't just kill a brand, they broke the promise first. Oldsmobile invented the modern American car, delivering the first mass-market overhead valve V8 engine, the first mass-market automatic transmission, and the first domestic front-wheel drive production car. It lasted 107 years. So what happened? 2 decades of platform sharing made Oldsmobiles indistinguishable from Chevrolets. GM spent $1 billion to close the division. The last Alero rolled off the line in April 2004. The oldest American automobile brand did not die fighting. It died by being exactly like the car next to it on the lot. 15. Actuaries killed American muscle, not the EPA, from 1969 to 1971. The muscle car era ran from 1964 to 1971. Cars like the GTO, the Chevelle SS, and the Hemi Cuda defined that period. Then it ended. Most people get it wrong. It was not the EPA. Insurance companies analyzed accident data and added surcharges so severe that a 19-year-old buying a Chevelle SS in 1969 paid more annually in insurance than some buyers paid for their entire car. Actuaries killed American muscle. Washington just cleaned up afterward. 16. Plymouth beat the Mustang by 14 days, dead by 2001. Plymouth outsold everything in America for 4 straight decades. The Barracuda debuted April 1st, 1964, 14 days before Ford unveiled the Mustang. So, what happened? 20 years of complete platform sharing with Dodge made it impossible to explain why Plymouth still existed. The last Plymouth, a Neon, rolled off the line in June 2001. They beat Ford to the pony car market by 2 weeks and yet were outlasted by a rebadged Dodge. That's the whole story. 17. AMC built the Jeep. It did not survive. American Motors was the last truly independent American automaker. The company that built the Jeep, the Javelin, the AMX, and the Eagle all-wheel drive crossover that predicted the crossover market by a decade. Renault's failed partnership drained AMC's capital through the 1980s. Chrysler purchased AMC in 1987. It kept Jeep, and it shut down everything else. Jeep is now Stellantis's most profitable product line. AMC built it. AMC does not exist. 18. Studebaker, building before Ford existed. Gone by 1966. Studebaker started building wagons in 1852 before the Civil War. They moved to automobiles in 1902, a full year before Henry Ford incorporated his company. Post-war costs, aging factories, and relentless Big Three pricing eroded every margin. The last American-built Studebaker rolled out of South Bend, Indiana in December 1963. South Bend never fully recovered. The city is still waiting for something to replace them. Number 19. CAFE standards, the law that ended the full-size American car, 1975. The Energy Policy and Conservation Act passed in 1975, 2 years after the oil embargo emptied American gas stations. One law. And the full-size American car never came back. Every domestic manufacturer was forced to downsize their cars, adopt front-wheel drive layouts, and put 4-cylinder engines across the lineup to meet rising fuel economy averages or pay-per-vehicle penalties. By 1985, the land yachts your father drove were gone, not because Americans stopped wanting them, but because that law from 1975 made them impossible to build profitably. 20. Ralph Nader. One book. American Law Changed Forever. 1965. Ralph Nader published Unsafe at Any Speed in 1965. He was 31 years old, with no institutional backing and no funding. His argument was precise. American cars killed people because the fix cost more than the lawsuits. Congress passed the National Traffic and Motor Vehicle Safety Act in 1966. NHTSA was created. Every recall, every safety mandate, every criminal fine on this list flows from that one book. They tried to destroy him. He rewrote American law. These weren't accidents. Accidents happen when something goes wrong that nobody saw coming. What you just watched were decisions made in conference rooms by executives who ran the numbers and chose wrong. Sometimes they chose wrong because the fix cost $1 more than they wanted to spend. Sometimes because the truth would cost them a quarter's earnings. and sometimes because they thought nobody was watching. The roads you drive on tonight are different because of every decision on this list. If you think we've seen the last of them, you haven't been paying attention. Drop a comment. Which one of these genuinely shocked you? I read every single one.